Small business is a huge part of American culture, and you would be remiss if you come here and you plan to live here or work here and you have no idea about American small business.
It's that American entrepreneurship that we are famous for that makes a huge difference in how we act on a daily basis.
So, what do Americans go through before they start a company? What is the process? What is it like? We are using this video as an opportunity to put into practice all those phrasal verbs we did last week. So what is it? How do you get around to starting a business in America, and how do you think about that?
Let's talk about it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to WaiGuo Friends English. As promised, we're going to use today's video as a follow-up of our previous video where we were talking about some phrasal verbs of business, and a lot of them kind of revolved around the idea of how do you start a business, or what is that process like?
Just to put this into perspective, how big small business is in America. A small business is by definition a business that has up to 500 employees. So that's a big difference. That could be a very massive thing to deal with, but as such, American small business is a huge part of our economy, and we are all about getting out there and supporting local, even though the products that a small business makes are typically more expensive. They are not able to compete at the degree that these larger companies are able to. Still, it's a huge part of our culture. It is something that a lot of people aspire to do, is to start their own business, either as a side hustle, something for earning a few $100s on the side, versus being able to monetize a hobby that they enjoy just to make use of their time, versus just actually trying to start that business and live off of it from home. Whatever it is a big thing that a lot of Americans aspire to do.
So to give you guys some perspectives on this, in the past few years, we've had record-breaking years for the number of businesses that were created. Over 5 million small businesses were created like each year. It's insane. I think a large part of it comes down to people looking around and tapping into some resource around them, whether it's an extra bit of capital that they have that they want to see grow, or just having some skills like you were just talking about, like hobbies that they can then monetize. I think people are more willing now than ever to look around and kind of be more creative and say, what can we do with this?
But when you start a business, you have to think of a lot of things. It's got to be scalable. So it's got to be something that can build up and actually be profitable. But then you also have this idea of what is possible, right? Because you have a cap. We call it a cap. It's a natural cap, which is what you are able to do by man hours, what you are able to do like yourself, or by the number of employees. Every new employee can bring new possibilities with their own unique skill set and their own availability. What is possible for the business increases with each new employee. But again, employees are very expensive. Some businesses like ours aspires to be much smaller. Like, for example, for us, we support ourselves with our own business, but we choose to run it just between the two of us to keep it pretty small so that we can serve better. We don't want to run a massive company. That would be a completely different lifestyle. There'd be a lot more to do, though our cap would be increased. We would have to churn out a lot more product. We'd have to be constantly thinking about new things. We'd be having to constantly be managing people. Some people do aspire to do that, but that's not our inclination. We don't want to cap that high.
We would be writing up reports more than actually doing business and doing the things we love to do. And I think that's a lot of Americans are concerned about that. When we say small business, again, it doesn't have to be like tiny. It doesn't have to be 2 people. It just means less than 500 employees. So most of the businesses that you see, if you come to America, you walk around downtown in a certain city, most of those are small businesses. And it is a special place to be, like you said, to have even human resources that you can tap into. But it is kind of a balance that you have to strike.
Of course, you have to balance just your profit margins. You have to balance this idea of what can you bring to the table that these bigger companies don't. The answer is usually just a personalized touch, like a person to person, my family to yours situation. And you will actually hear that phrase a lot, from our family to yours, Merry Christmas, or something like that. You will see this a lot in American commercials, in American stores and signs and things of this nature. But we have this family touch. Some people will say here, like, the one thing you can market that nobody else can is yourself. And that's the idea of a brand, right? That's the idea behind a brand. But I do think it's interesting that so many people do go for that in America. They do aim for starting a small business.
When thinking through, like, how can you compete with these huge businesses, right? How can you compete with the Walmart and the Google and the Microsoft, like companies that would absolutely destroy a small business? How can you compete with that? And thinking through it, I think it's just the idea, like you were saying, showing people that we're real people that actually know your name or actually know your homework or actually know how well you do or what you struggle with. It's not a computer generated response, not an impersonal touch, but it's a saying, you support our family and we support your family. That's, I think, the biggest distinction that I see that small business has against, big corporate America.
It is true. Like, the larger you are, the more cookie cutter your product becomes. So, for example, you can go to McDonald's anywhere in the world, it's going to be McDonald's. Like, yes, they might change a few things to fit the area that they're in, but it's still the same package. What they're monetizing is familiarity. You know that if you walk into McDonald's in Hong Kong, you can order some of the same stuff that you can order here just down the street. That's what they're selling. That's not what a small business can give. They cannot give that. It's a different market in a lot of ways too.
I think big corporate America does that because it's easy to train up new people. It's easy to do that startup process. Like, for a small business to open a franchise somewhere, for a small business to open a new location somewhere, that's a big deal. It's complicated. You have no idea how that works and you have a lot of questions. But for a big business to open a franchise somewhere, they probably already have a very predetermined model of, this is how we have a successful business in this new location. It's really not that complicated. Boom, you push it out, you churn out a whole new franchise.
I think it's not complicated from their side, from their paperwork. I think it's more complicated with the city ordinances. Like, you have to get the permits, it's got to fit in with the city, they have to approve it. I feel like that part would be the confusing part. Like, you can have like a McDonald's floor plan, for example, and the whole kit and everything set aside, you're ready to go. But if it doesn't fit that city, then they're going to turn it down. Sometimes you just have to work with the building that they're willing to give you. You have to style things differently. Sometimes it could be anything. It won't be something that's easy to just start up so you can tuck some extra money away, right? That's the great thing about starting something completely fresh instead of buying into a franchise, is like, you run it based off of how you see fit. As long as you're within the box that the law gives you and you pay your taxes, you're going to be fine. It could also just be easier on the mind to just buy into a franchise and they give you everything and a full training course for employees and everything. You don't have to create that from scratch, basically. That would be nice in a lot of ways. As business owners, we know that would be nice, but at the same time, that brings with it its own thing. There's a much less flexibility. It's difficult to stand out. People come to you because of the franchise name, not because of you. That's both better and worse somehow.
I think you got to wise up. I think as small business owners ourselves, it's one of the things where you have to constantly be upskilling yourself and just getting to be more knowledgeable, because, as we have said before, it's all on you as the business owner. That's the scary part. It's the fun part, but it means that you're always researching, you're always looking into things, you're always looking up things, and it's incredibly stressful when it's on you. You don't have an accountant, maybe, you don't have a researcher, you don't have a person who has all of the tax laws in their back pocket, so you have to do all that information, that research yourself, because you could have a lot of consequences if you don't prepare well.
I will say, there's nothing that will grow you like being a business owner.
Oh, yeah.
Like, starting your own business, you have to wear so many hats. And that can be exhausting. It can lead to burnout. But at the same time, like, there's nothing else that's as, like, ridiculously adventurous as that. Which, when I say adventurous, I often mean, like, clicking around on the internet for hours and hours and hours, doing a research and asking questions and contacting people, just learning and soaking things up like a sponge. If you don't want that kind of extra work in your life, don't start a business. But it is very cool. Like, there are things that I have done that I never would have dreamed of doing, and I never would have done had I chosen a traditional career path, unless it just happened to focus on that thing, like building websites. Never in my life would have learned how to do that if I wasn't a business owner. I guess being a business owner in America turns you into a jack of trades of sorts, because you want to have a tangible understanding and practical experience in every area before you hire somebody. We could confidently hire somebody now in so many different areas to loosen up the bottleneck that we have on our own business. And we could scale it very easily if we do that. Now that we know what we're looking for, now we know what they would be facing, now that we know how to communicate to that person, we would be able to hire out certain things to be able to do that a little bit easier. But we'd also lose the need to be on top of absolutely everything as well.
Yeah.
And we would lose the constant learning that comes with being pushed outside of your comfort zone, essentially, being pushed to do things that you normally wouldn't research or look into or learn how to do. There is a balance here, and it sounds probably nuts from your end if you're watching this, but that's one of the reasons that we started our own business, is just to be able to grow like that. It's a need, you have to, and it's really cool.
When we lived abroad, that was one of the most amazing feelings, like being able to go out and talk to people from another culture, and you cannot go a day without learning something new. Even though it felt like you were scraping together bits of language or scraping together bits of energy just to go out and go do something, if you did that, you would learn something new.
It was awesome.
It was great. And I feel like that's a lot of what like being a business owner is now, where it's like every day there is something new. Yes, a lot of times it's a challenge. Yes, a lot of times it's not the most fun thing to have to deal with at that moment in time.
Causes a lot of headaches.
It's a little stressful, but you don't get that kind of ingenuity, that need to be on the ball. You don't get that when you're in like a normal, traditional 9-to-5, go do your work and come back home kind of job.
If it's the nature of your work, you might. Like if you work in a small company, if you are employed by a small company, your title might be one thing, but you actually might do the job of 5 different titles. The flip side of business ownership is joining a business as an employee, a small business. Often what happens with these businesses that are growing, these startups that become mature businesses, especially after a merger or something like that, then you wear a lot of hats as well in your position. So you might be a senior marketing strategist, but you also might dabble in all kinds of things. You might be an IT person, but you also might dabble in training people. You might also work in all kinds of other things and also be the spokesperson talking to people higher than you. So that's one of the things. If you really want to grow aggressively in a lot of different ways, then joining a small business might be the way to do it. And it's really cool. I will not sit here and tell you that it's easy, because it's definitely not. We know a lot of people that work in small businesses. You feel a lot of ownership in the business. You do get to participate in some big things and you get to shape it, which is exciting and it's really cool. There's a lot of energy there, but at the same time, you can burn out very easily because of how much extra work you're doing. After that kind of experience, it's nice to step into a larger company and experience what it's like to do the job of one person. That's like a vacation.
I mean, that's why we use the words like set up a business and start up a business, because it's absolutely a process. You build a business up over time, and then 10 years down the road, when everything's running smoothly, everybody's like, wow, this is really good. Everything's really good. And it's because it's been 10 years of scraping and scrounging that has led to this moment where things are running well and things are like a well-oiled machine now. You have solved one problem at a time. And you've made the whole system more efficient. As you go on, you end up with this really solid business, but you have to keep on pushing, and that's the hard part.
So, to start wrapping this up, I have a question for you. Do you suggest that anybody out there start their own business?
I always suggest people start up their own business. I heard it said from a friend one time that specifically every American needs to have their own business. And the reason is mostly because of taxes. Because there's so much that you can push off onto taxes in a healthy way, in a legal way, that to say, this is my business and I'm using this business. So if you have a business, but you also have a car and you use that car for business and personal uses, that's legal in America, and you can track those miles for the car, and those miles will actually end up paying a large percentage of the car itself. If you don't want to use it for personal, then obviously, if the business is doing well, you could buy a business vehicle. So all of that comfort of driving comes from the business's money, from the service that you provide for other people. You have that satisfaction for being able to serve other people, real people out there in the world. And you get feedback, you start to have this problem solving kind of mentality. So even if the business completely fails, which hopefully it doesn't, but even if it does, it starts a process in you as a person, I think. Maybe this is going too deep, but you as a person to say, if I have a problem, I can go out there and I can fix a problem for me and for other people. And I can be compensated for it. My family can have money and support others and my own family. It's a great thing. It's a great thing to be able to put a lot of energy into, instead of at the end of the day just sitting there playing a video game or sitting there watching a movie, which both those things I really like to do, but being able to use a little bit of energy at the end of the day to do your own business is a great thing.
It will push you and it will push buttons, and some people just might not need that extra craziness in life, and that's totally fine. We're not sitting here saying you have to start a business. No. But if you get the opportunity to start a business and you are an adventurous person, you like learning things, you like being on your toes all the time, then it's a good venture to take on. It's a great thing to take on. And it is a lot of extra work. You don't work 40 hours a week. You work more like 60 or 70 hours a week. But at the same time, you are aggressively growing the whole time. So if that's something that you are interested in, perhaps starting a small business of your own is one way to go with that. But at the same time, if not, I hope that this conversation helped you catch on to some phrasal verbs just in natural conversation, because the more that you can hear and pick up in natural conversation, the better.
Thank you guys so much for sticking with us on this video as we geek out on business stuff, because we actually love it. These conversation videos are a great way for you to see how natural things happen in real life, that we're not scripting these answers. We are having a conversation. This is what we desired when we were learning language, when we were abroad. We hope that it's helpful to you as well. So we'll catch you on the next one.